So these next few slides here try to look at considering phase error and how phase errors build out if you have a free-running frequency source. So this is a slide that's taken from the masterclass. I guess probably Charles put this together some years ago. And it just purely looks at a fractional frequency offset and an elapsed time. So if we observe, we measure for 1,000 seconds, then the actual phase error that we have is just purely that number of seconds times that offset. So we have 1,000 nanoseconds. A fractional frequency offset of 1 part in 10 to the minus 10 gives us 100 nanoseconds, and this is the G.811. This is the significant, the holy grail frequency accuracy that's in G.811. So you can see that over 1,000 seconds, if we had a cesium, we would measure a phase error of 10 nanoseconds. So why is this important? Well, this slide here is sort of playing devil's advocate somewhat in that we are taking the worst case here. So we're taking that 1 part in 10 to the 11. That's not what a commercially available cesium would achieve. You can expect in terms of performance an order of magnitude or more, 2 orders of magnitude better performance than that. But this is purely doing the sums, doing the math. How long would it take to slip a microsecond? So if we're talking about accuracy requirements at the end of at the edge of the network of a microsecond at that frequency offset of 1 part in 10 to the 11, how long would it take us to slip a microsecond? So it's purely how many you divide one by the other. So 10 to the 11, it takes approximately 10 to the 5 or 100,000 seconds. So that's just over a day. So again, bear in mind this is a devil's advocate type of view. So we're saying if you need that stability at the edge of the network and you're relying purely on a frequency source, at worst case, you could slip a microsecond every day, roughly. So whatever implication that has on the services that operators are providing, that is the actual requirement that we calculate. And again, if we take rubidium oscillators that are possibly more widely distributed throughout the network, if you have a rubidium holdover, again, just taking a very, very rough rule of thumb, 1 magnitude worse, so you say parts in 10 to the 10, then it would take you just over 2 3/4 hours to slip a microsecond. So is that an acceptable level of performance that you would expect from your mobile network? The line at the bottom here is saying, well, okay, if we say that 10 to the minus 12 is a bit more realistic or a bit more achievable, then it starts to stretch out to more days. But it's just making the point, really, that frequency distribution alone won't cut it. And this slide talks about you can't escape UTC. So we're talking about different networks, or rather operators, different parts of their network might be carried by third parties. So even if you could make an argument for one operator, for example, EE could be, if they could run their whole network from one free-running cesium clock, and if the whole network were traceable to that, then the whole network would be in phase. But things aren't often as easy as that in real life, so you have to utilize other networks, you have to utilize other technologies, and you can't escape UTC. Somewhere, someone will have a GPS reference network. So this slide starts to talk about UTC, the global timescale, so coordinated universal time. It's created from an ensemble of the world's primary national labs frequency standards. I think Tim's presentation after the coffee break gives you a little bit more information on how those numbers are put together. But the primary frequencies generate a timescale known as International Atomic Time. Now, these acronyms aren't in the right order in English because they're either French or they're a compromise. The French are involved because it's the BIPM, the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that in its French form. Is a body in Paris that ensembles all these frequency references, all these frequency standards together to create, first of all, this International Atomic Time scale. And then, taking into account the Earth's rotation, we add or subtract leap seconds as we have to, because the Earth's rotation is slowing down due to the effects of the sea, due to the effects of the moon, the tides. Each day is roughly 2 milliseconds longer than the previous one. So every now and then, every 500 days or so, we have to add a leap second, which is where This body called the International Earth Rotation Service comes in and decides when we add or take away leap seconds from UTC. So UTC is this global timescale. It's referred to as a paper clock because it's an ensemble of everybody's clock, you can't actually connect to it. So the closest you can get to it is either connect to something that's connected to a source of UTC, either GPS or NTP, and then when this circular T is published, you can find out in the past how close your clock that you connected to, how close their contribution was. So in this country, it's NPL, the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington, that contributes into UTC. If you connect to the MSF time signal, the radio signal from Anthorn, then you're connecting to UTC's contribution to UTC. When the circular T is published by the BIPM, you can then go back and see how close you were to it in the past. So it's referred to as a paper clock because it doesn't exist in the present. But that being said, that's not necessarily a problem because, as it says on this bullet point here, the most accurate and cost-effective way is GPS. So GPS is, the time base on GPS is derived from the US Naval Office's contribution into UTC. So when we talk about time phase alignment in telecom networks and using GPS, what we're actually doing is we're aligning that 1 PPS physical signal that we looked at coming from that connector on that network element is effectively derived from the USNO version of UTC, traceable all the way back. And it's most often used as a common view timing source. So when we're talking about, in Chris Roberts' slides earlier, he's talking about measuring one-way packet delay, we're using GPS at either end of the link. So going back to this concept of can't we just use a free-running frequency and synchronize the whole network from that, then in the real world, no. You will come across an operator, a wireline operator somewhere, somebody will be using GPS. So you have that offset. The cesium is effectively always free-running. GPS is derived from UTC, so it's steered towards the best, most accurate clock that we can create on planet Earth from all these primary frequency reference standards.